Good evening, folks. I hope everybody's well and hope everyone can hear me okay. Typical thing, been playing Rocksmith like the last couple of days and all my settings go to shit because Ubisoft don't go into the software and go, yeah, we'll borrow that stuff but we'll put it back how we found it. Of course they don't. Why would they? But anyway, I hope everybody's ready for a nice weekend. Haven't been working too hard. I've just had the week off. I've spent a bit of the time just setting up for the new review, though I must confess I'm in a bit of a desperate race on a game called Satisfactory to complete it before the big update on the 10th. I've got one more tier to complete and they deliberately set it really, really stupidly high so nobody would actually kind of complete it, and I'm one of those assholes that will just go, no, I'm going to do it. But yeah, I have actually started the new review. I just watched the film yesterday and I started a bit of writing, and it's going to be a really difficult one to do. It is a Franco-file, and it is, I don't know if I said it last week, but it's this one, Eugenie Dessard. This film is tricky, to say the least. A whole bunch of the stuff that it kind of goes into, not that it's massively deep or anything. There are aspects of it which are kind of, true to Sardian kind of philosophies and that kind of stuff. It's going to be tricky. I don't know how I'm going to get around some of the things without causing myself potential issues, but yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of the Franco files struck down for community standards things, saying that it's nudity and stuff in videos shouldn't be titillating. I'm going like, this is one of my videos. I kind of sat there narrating in my normal voice. If anybody finds it sexy when I'm talking over it, then that might be a little bit of a problem. Is that the Christopher Lee one, mate? No, it's not. This it's a very small cast in it. Jess Franco's in it. It's not. It's a bit more than just a cameo, but he's in it quite a bit. But it's Paul Muller and who else we got in there? Obviously Soledad Miranda. Yeah, not many people in it, but yeah, it's a tricky one. The subject matter is dicey, to say the least, to talk about. Not because I would go out there and to advocate certain aspects of the film, what the protagonists or antagonists or whatever you want to call them are involved in this particular film. But the subject matter is so fucking touchy that it's not going to be an easy one to do without risking certain kickback on it. But there you go. But it's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, Hardware, I managed to get that up this week as well. So hopefully you've had a chance to enjoy that. That's one that really I kind of felt that it probably should have been done. Should have been approached maybe slightly differently. It's a tricky one. There's a lot of things going on in Hardware. Not all of it sort of ties together 100% in terms of the quality of what's sort of being said, because it tends to jump around a little bit. But I mean, for instance, there's things like the visual aspect, the kind of focus on eyes and sight and stuff like that, and then on top of that, there's other things, which is the politics of the world that this is set in, which is this sort of anti-reproduction kind of thing, a sort of semi-fascist, post-apocalyptic world. So there's all those kind of things going on. It almost deserves sort of looking at those aspects as almost in isolation to some extent. But fantastic film, really, really like it. It's going to be weird if Richard Stanley, it'll be interesting to see where, if he actually kind of catches it, because there's a part of the video there was this thing that Josh basically asked my opinion on the film. I told him, and then he told Richard Stanley. Which is kind of, he said flattery will get you everywhere or something like that. So I don't know. I doubt he'll get to see it, but it is one of those things. It's kind of, it's a very small world. That's one of the things I found out doing all this kind of stuff. Loved the Hardware soundtrack. Great use of music. Yes, he does. I mentioned in the review that he has a real affinity with music. Music's very important, including in the way that the earlier films particularly are edited and put together. There's a real kind of music video sort of vibe going on. It's kind of interesting. Hello. So hello to everyone. I think the next time we do one of these, I was looking at a double bill of Night of the Living Dead. So the original and the remake. I'll class it as a bring your own media, but there are versions knocking around, and hopefully John will be joining me on that one if he's available at that time. It'll either be next week or the week after, but I think that could be kind of fun and an interesting one to sort of like run those back to back and see what's sort of going on. You have to check that one out. Never seen it. I think you'll find it interesting, John. I think you'll find that an interesting one. It's a very challenging one in terms of the subject matter. I'd say literally out of all the Dessard films that I've seen, that are, by the likes of Jess Franco, not so much Salo. Salo is probably, it's a bit more in your face about certain stuff, but the kind of subject matter is equally as touchy in that. It's just a question of whether you think Franco took it particularly seriously, and I think he did, to be honest with you. It's my first impression. But I took a bit of a wander out this morning because I figured it was a nice day. I thought I'd take a little bit of a wander out. Oh, actually, what I will say is, first off, before I show you what I picked up this morning, I'm doing tomorrow. The reason the stream's tonight, I was going to do it tomorrow. The reason the stream is tonight is because I'm actually recording a new Blu-ray thing. I mentioned it last time. There's a new Blu-ray commentary, Josh Hadley and myself. And we are, because he's announced which it is now, but we're doing this one. So this is, it's got a few titles, but the one it's most known by is The Island of the Bloody Plantation, right? This film is kind of a little bit sort of, it's a little out there, to say the least. It's a women in prison movie. And as such, it has that kind of vibe. But it's an interesting film in some respects because it doesn't have, or at least it doesn't fall down the trap of just doing the sort of general Jess Franco, Ilsa type of stuff of having female guards running around with the tits out. In fact, actually, most of the cast, the prisoner cast, are reasonably well attired for the most part. It doesn't drop down a lot of those exploitation tropes necessarily, but it is definitely sort of more in the vibe maybe of 99 Women. But the story behind this is actually quite fascinating. So it's going to be an interesting one to do. It's got Udo Kier in it. Apart from anything else. Yeah. So I'm going to be recording that tomorrow. Josh's reaction to it was absolutely priceless. I don't quite think he understood what he was taking on. He got me onto it because he says, "Oh, that's very, very much a Glenn type thing," and it kind of is because it's that Euro sleaze exploitation kind of thing. One of the very specific subgenres that I've spent an awful lot of time looking at, not necessarily voluntarily. The very few of them I kind of came to thinking, oh no, I really got to review this. It's been on a list somewhere, and part of doing that list is you've got to approach films like that. So I've tackled probably a lot more of those than he has. So hopefully I will have some reasonable insight. Plus I've got a bit of information on the background to that, which was... It was rather an extraordinary production. There was so many things that happened during the making of that movie that it was a little bit extraordinary, to say the least. But before I do move on, what I'm going to say is the link should be down below in the description. So please get yourselves ready for that. We are watching the Wes Craven film Chiller. I've not seen it before, so I'm going to be interested to see this one. It's been one I've been needing to sort of watch for a long time, but never quite got round to. But to give you time to get yourself set up for that, we'll just have a quick look at some of these pickups, because I've got some interesting stuff. Two of them are films I've not seen, and I'm not upgrading from previous versions. These are my first addition to these, but I got the Dunwich Horror, which I'm kind of interested to look at. Arrow release. I'm kind of looking forward to having a bit of a squiz at that. It's got lots of special features, as is the way with Arrow, generally speaking. So quite a nice little package. And it's got commentaries and track on there. Yeah, a few documentaries and stuff like that. I don't know the film well enough to talk about it at this point, so yeah. The other one, Bruiser. This is a label I've not really sort of heard before, which is what, Indicator, I think it is. Yeah, so this is a really nice edition as well. So it's got so much stuff in it. So you got the movie. There's a book in there, a very thick one as well. It's quite substantial, and some kind of like lobby card type things going on. Captain says Wes Craven has so many throwaway trash horror flicks between his known classics I won't be able to name offhand. Yeah, you know, the guy was kind of running around doing stuff, wasn't he? So yeah, I'm going to be kind of interested to have a look at this. This is a Romero film that I've not seen before. One of his sort of when his kind of name declined somewhat in terms of kind of current films, he hadn't really done that much, really. A lot of his, well, at least not stuff that was particularly kind of big. And yeah, so, you know, I've missed out on it before. It kind of it's such a nice package as well. It wasn't the cheapest. I think this was about 20 quid, this thing. But it's got a really nice nice quality book in there, which I'm going to have a nice time looking at, I have no doubt. And it's such a nice feeling package as well. It's one of the things I've noticed, you know, over the last few years. There's been an awful lot of releases of Blu-rays that just come in really, really crappy packaging. It's like, why? They just stop bothering, really. I guess they're going like, oh, you know, it's not worth spending that much money on and stuff. But you get nice packages just like this, because this is the other one I got, which I was very tickled to get. This is an upgrade from my very box standard DVD that I had, the one that I used for the review originally, Section 3. So, which I think this has some kind of documentary or kind of something about the whole kind of what is the Section 3 thing. Very rude that I wasn't invited along to that one, but there you go. And I'll try and get this. This is one thing with this package. I noticed it earlier. It is very, very heavily packed. Very tight. There we go. Can I get that out? Come on. You have to really go for it. I nearly got it. Come on. You know you wanna. Oh, crikey. There we go. So, this comes with it's like lobby card type things. I haven't bothered to take this apart yet, but I don't know if I can show you. It's just kind of a few bits and pieces like that. So, A little reluctant to take that band off just because I think it's going to be an absolute dick to put back again. And there's a booklet on it. It's quite nice again, nicely printed. It smells very new as well. And these are all brand new, so there you go. I think that's about the Section 3 sort of stuff. Who wrote that, I wonder? Just see if I can find it. John Martin, apparently. And then there's the Blu-ray itself. The reversible sleeve and all that kind of stuff. Not my favourite of the Section 3 ones, but it's a really nice package. And it is an interesting little film in some respects. Marjoe Gortner starring in, so it's kind of fun. Have some of that. I have the same Mausoleum release as Simon. Yeah, it looks really good actually. I think it is one of those films that can stand a little bit of cleaning up, and because it's quite a lustrous type of film. Lots of colour and stuff going on. Hopefully they haven't. If I remember right, there's a bit where this character's sort of flying or something like that, and then you can see a rail up in the ceiling. Someone says Bruiser was a good one, first time on disc in the UK. Yes, it's been a harder one to find. Even that at the moment, that's a limited edition, if I'm right in thinking. So there's not too many copies floating around. But I've got it now, so I'll get to hopefully chance to watch that maybe this weekend. So that should be quite good. Yes, John. It is. It's an interesting little film. It's very entertaining in many respects. And it's kind of fun, Marjoe Gortner, considering where he came from and where he ended up in terms of what he did for a living. I mean, it was all showbiz at the end of the day, but it was very different ends of show business. Oh dear. Right, so hopefully everybody is more or less sort of ready to go. Start giving me a thumbs up in the chat when you're ready. So yeah, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I'm looking forward to the doing the commentary, and it's going to be interesting because like I said, I don't think Josh really knows what he thinks about it. He seemed incredibly baffled by it when he posted about it. But given my kind of like time spent watching lots and lots of these things, hopefully I'll have something reasonable to bring to the game. When we did Mike here, one of the things about with that one was what I brought to it was the censorship history. With this one, I've got a much more sort of wider field of experience when it comes to women in prison films. I've not seen all of them by any means, but I've got to have seen at least a dozen or more. Just because of the Section 3 and stuff like that. Jess Franco did so many of them in his own right, and of course I've sort of bumped into a few of them. What with the likes of Love Camp 7 and stuff like that. So yeah, Bruce has struggled to get distribution. I first saw it on the Horror Channel. Yeah, it's another one. It just limited releases on a whole bunch of these, and I think that was one of the things that sort of killed it. It wasn't really kind of pushed that much because everybody, when it came to George Romero, everybody was like, oh, if it's not zombies you can go home kind of thing, which is a real shame. It's a sad attitude because like I've said before, one of my favourite George Romero films is Night Riders. Such a wonderful film, that one. Okay. Right, I'm going to assume that everybody's just about ready, and we'll get started in just a moment. So if you make sure that you clicked on the link, and it'll be Chiller Wes Craven TV movie 1985. And like I say, I haven't watched this, so it's going to be an interesting one to watch. And it's sort of right in that kind of like, Wes Craven getting big kind of era. Really like Martin. Yes, it's a great film. I would like to have the. Haven't you know? I've got it up there. I'm going to have a look at that. I haven't actually watched the Blu-ray, but I do have quite a good edition sat up there. I was very, very nearly. I nearly bought the Criterion Eraserhead, the UK version, because I've got the US version, and that's the one with the slight mistake. But I made an absolute mistake with going into FOP today, because apparently it's like one of the 3 days within the year that they didn't have a sale on. So it was like about 25-30 quid or whatever it was for the Eraserhead Criterion. And it was like, no, not gonna. I've already got like 4 different editions of that thing. Got Chiller lined up. Stars Michael Beckoff, The Warriors, and Xanadu, I think. Okay. Right, fantastic. We will get started. So, well, usual thing. On the count of 3, go on, go. So, 3, 2, 1, go. Well, it's a little bit of nostalgia for you with the CBS Fox logo. Your mark of quality. Oh, hello. Why did it do that? Sorry, folks. I'm going to have to start again. For some reason, it just jumped straight through. Okay, stop for a second, guys. Reset, and then I'll give you 10 seconds to do that, and then we'll start again. It literally just jumped about 10 minutes for some reason. I must have accidentally hit something. Aborted attempt. Okay, so now we will start on count of 3, go on, go. We'll try and make this not a false start this time. So 3, 2, 1, go. Just get this into full screen. It's just one of those logos, isn't it? The CBS Fox one. It just kind of brings back memory of a whole bunch of films as you go along. They're probably making the stuff. Like I say, John was the one that suggested it. He also suggested the stuff, which I would have gone for, but we've done it once or twice before. The story you're watching is true. I love the authoritative kind of aspects of having that narrated and kind of like the scroll text. There is something about that. It's just kind of fun, especially when you sort of understand a little bit again about what that does and how it works. It's a bit like The Thing, isn't it? This opening. That's really cool. Yes, they do, John. Dick O'Neill. Is that a suggestion? Well, Stan Winston effect, excellent. I love this music, by the way. It does have something of the John Carpenter look to it, doesn't it? In a galaxy on the industrial estate down the road. Yes, John. God, you got all of that VHS sort of grain, haven't you? The sort of fudginess of. Thing is, I don't remember it always looking like that. It was always the lowest quality VHS might look like that. The whole story of VHS is just absolutely fascinating. And it's funny, you know, people do kind of like talk about that sort of stuff and go, well, why do you feel, why do people still collect them? Because the thing is, if you weren't there, if you didn't kind of experience what VHS did for the market, for us as consumers of watchers of movies and stuff like that, then it's very difficult to see why it is it has still holds an appeal, a nostalgic appeal at the very least. It's not to say that, you know, films should continue to be released on VHS and that kind of stuff, but there's something special, very, very special about it as a format because of what it did and how it changed our lives. And it was revolutionary. In a way that no other format has ever been. You know, DVD, when it came out, was basically, you know, you could buy movies with frills attached. When it came to VHS, it was like you didn't have that option before at all to just go, well, you know, other than having film reels and shit like that, you never really had that opportunity to build an affordable and practical movie collection. It's turned into the Return of the Living Dead, yes. Which is a great film. I love Return of the Living Dead. Very, very fond memories of that. And a film which it was really, you know, considering the level of comedy in it, still managed to be frightening. People say you can't mix comedy and horror. You absolutely can. There's a campaign to get a special edition of I Saw the TV Glow released on VHS. Really? Okay. I don't know if it's a commercially viable thing. Is the only thing. I've got no particular desire to see VHS sort of come out as, you know, more films, unless there's a really kind of particular reason for that. It's not a format that really kind of stands up to current day standards. But it is amazing, you know, that you can still buy VHS from the early 80s and that cassette will still work as long as it was looked after. I did see this thing about like Blu-rays and DVDs and CDs and people kind of saying, oh, well, you know, disc rot. And it's like they forget that disc rot was actually a manufacturing fault. It wasn't an inherent thing with that particular media form. If they're made to a decent quality, they will last a long, long time. It was just when they cheaped out. And I think True Lies was like with the Laserdisc. That was one of the worst ones because they didn't seal the edges of the Laserdisc. So basically air got in and that's all it was. It was like it wasn't a mould or anything. It was the air getting in and then kind of causing chemical changes and corrosion. Are they still making VHS players? I think there might be one company in the world that's still making them. I think there will be a continued possibility to still get hold of VHS players. I've got 2 or 3, just because, you know, I want to be able to play my VHS cassettes. I can't really do it in my current situation, unfortunately. Horror comedy only really works if horror is real, i.e. when someone dies, they are dead. Well, I had to explain Return of the Living Dead, because they're sort of dead, but they're not dead. I'm being facetious, of course. I don't understand what you mean. I'd say there's exceptions to every rule. I think it's sincerity is the thing. As it's the same with most things. Things like Scary Movie and that kind of stuff don't work as horror comedies for me because I don't think they're very sincere. They're kind of sneering at the genre. Whereas something, and I've said it before, something like Club Dread, as a for instance, for me works as a comedy horror, because although it laughs at the tropes and all that kind of stuff, and it is, you know, it's very robust in its kind of like poking fun at the genre, it also indulges 100% in that. It's very sincere about what it does. It is what it takes the piss out of, and it's very aware of that. It's not for everyone. It is a very goofy comedy. Oh, what was the other one? Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Another very good horror comedy. Remember the Looney Tune movies on VHS? The Joe Dante. Yeah. It's Project Sweet Death, this, isn't it? Quick, surround him in Haagen-Dazs. Should have taken the 5-year warranty out of Freezer Pod. Oh, the real industry has been sketchy as fuck, apparently. I don't know if it still exists as an industry, but it was a big thing at one point, that they would put people into these pods, but you know they just weren't really maintaining it that well. I mean, how much can you pay for this thing and keep you going for, you know, decades? It's a little bit kind of not a very good business model. Until it's a TV movie, loads of atmosphere and padding the story out. It's funny, isn't it? You know, people kind of think of stuff like the streaming services making their own films and TV series and stuff like that as being a new thing. But, you know, TV movies were a thing for donkey's years. I tell you what, this bloody week has gone really quick. It's a week off, and I'm like, fuck, it's Friday already. It's going to be one of those films where it's like, you know, returning from the edge of death type thing, and you come back, you've brought something with you kind of thing, isn't it? According to the urban legend, Walt Disney was cryogenically frozen. Yes, but I do think that was actually not true, from what I understand. I think it was an urban legend, in other words. I think you're quite right. Joe Dante's Twilight Zone segment had a Looney Tunes horror part too. He knew Chuck Jones, yes. You know what? It's a film I've got to watch again. It's been a very long time since I've seen it. The Stuff is a great film. Absolutely love that film. Just the right level of commentary where it's not intrusive, or kind of like smacking you over the head necessarily, but you can just watch it just for the lols. There's a Robot Chicken sketch about Walt Disney's head coming out of cryofreeze and causing mayhem. I've not seen much Robot Chicken. I've certainly not watched, I guess, an episode, but I've seen clips of it. It's fun enough. You declined to watch the Twilight movie due to, well, the incident. Yes, that is the moral quandary of watching that film. Someone who eats bad food, the stuff is very relatable. This definitely seems ill-advised, doesn't it? Themes, ladies and gentlemen. Shouldn't mess with the natural order. That without cryonics, how would we have the cinema classic They Saved Hitler's Brain? Yes. Immortality is a weird thing, isn't it, in that sort of respect? I said immortality, it's not strictly speaking immortality, but cheating death. It's a fascinating subject in its own right. You can go really, really deep with, is it morally correct? Is it even desirable? It sounds desirable. Nobody wants to die. Bako foil, man. We need woolly mittens stat. I'm just going to leave him some Bako foil Speedos, aren't they? Just pop him in the microwave for 10 minutes. On low power. The YouTube app on TV is playing up. What time are we up to? We are currently at 16 minutes and 34 seconds. Science versus religion sounds like something Craven might have read a book or two on. See, the director I would say that was most kind of into, well, would be most likely to do that kind of stuff would be probably Cronenberg. Whatever happened to be taking his interest at the time is what he would make movies about. You look at something like Videodrome, and you can tell that Cronenberg was reading a lot of postmodern theory at the time, Baudrillard or whatever. Did I Was a Teenage Werewolf teach us nothing? Yes. But the interesting thing about that, the whole kind of those kind of themes is they're fairly universal. I mean, they can be played with in multiple different ways and all that kind of stuff. But people understand that kind of thing, on a gut level. Whether they actually understand it or not is another matter. But you have a feeling and a reaction to that whole kind of idea. Hairdryer. There was an episode of Star Trek Next Gen that dealt with people, with reviving people who were cryogenically frozen. I think there might have been a couple of episodes, but I think I know the one you mean. It had like the kind of like stock market guy and stuff that stormed onto the bridge and stuff like that, if I remember right. I think Scotty on one. Or was he in a transporter thing? When they found Scotty in Next Gen. One of the reasons I love Craven is he paid his dues, worked really hard to get to where he was in the 90s. Hard-working filmmaker, yeah. I mean, I've often mentioned the Angela the Fireworks Woman, which he denied directing, but I'm pretty sure it looks so much like and feels so much like a Wes Craven film. Yes, and you're not going to find a DVD release of that in a hurry, I don't think. It's one of those cliches, isn't it? They're not supposed to restart a heart. Basically, they kind of... So if you've got like a heart that's not pumping, those paddles don't do anything. It's only when the heart's kind of getting out of sync with itself. And the idea is it's supposed to kind of like try to resync all the muscles. Because one form of heart attack is when the heart's kind of pumping in different ways that it should do. It should go in a very specific sort of sequence. And if it's out of sequence, then you've got a problem. So what the paddles do is basically stops the heart, because it contracts everything, and then kind of it all releases, and then hopefully it kicks back in. So if you're flatlined, then the paddles don't do anything. I don't think I'm wrong about that. Watched Fireworks Woman and reviewed People Under the Stairs. Craven's performance wasn't half bad, top hat and all. Yes, it was a very eccentric film in some respects, wasn't it? I have got a bootleg of it somewhere. I'll have to rewatch it again, because it is actually quite a genuinely interesting film in considering the genre. No, he did that line wrong. It should be, "It's alive! It's alive!" The actors' commentary for Last House on the Left is possibly my favourite. Just a trio slightly better than shitting on Wes Craven and Sean Cunningham. I'm going to have to listen to that again. It's been a long time. Christ, I'll have to try and dig it out, though. One of the annoying things at the moment, because I haven't got enough room to put all my Blu-rays and DVDs out, is finding the fucking things. Oh, new light, by the way. Hopefully it's working better than last week. I had a quick look back at it, and it was like, oh my god, it was really getting shadowy. But partly that was the battery failing. She looks like a stern woman, doesn't she? Yeah, I've got the special edition as well. I think it was the first one that was actually kind of fully uncut in this country. It took forever because it was like, I think, one or two releases before that were slightly cut down. One of the more interesting censorship stories is Last House on the Left. Back in a freezer. Oh, I have days like that where I'm just functioning. Life, don't talk to me about life. The Last House is definitely one of the weirder films in some respects. It's so kind of weirdly pitched. Like comedy cops and all that kind of stuff going on in it. I can understand why it was so controversial though. Whew, have to excuse me, I'm a bit hay fevery lately. Yeah. It's the machine that goes ping. I've got an urge just recently to rewatch the Poltergeist films for some reason. Don't know why that just occurred to me, but particularly the sequels. So this was a TV movie, yes, apparently. It sometimes surprises me. There are quite a few films that are sort of out there. It's a film called Virus, which I think I reviewed that. It's really long as well, but that's a TV movie. There's a whole bunch of them that are made for TV. And some of them are really good. First Poltergeist is really good. The sequels are bloody terrible. Yeah, I still got to rewatch them again at some point now. One of the first real horror movies I ever watched was Poltergeist 3. I got a certain amount of nostalgia for them because they were kind of some of the earlier films that I watched in the genre. The first one being Alien. I'm wondering if this is actual professional treatment or malpractice. Have I watched Alien Romulus yet? No, I haven't. I'm very reluctant these days to go to the cinema. I find the whole kind of cinema experience not much fun. Not because of COVID or anything like that. None of that really changed my mind. But mostly just because it's such a crapshoot as to whether you're going to have a good experience. I mean, the cinemas themselves care so little about quality. In my experience, that you can have a really bad screening and you've got very little recourse. But mostly it's the other people who come along to it. It's bad behaviour. It annoys me. Just stresses me out. This is clearly not normal, isn't it? It's a really cool effect. Hello, Collector Adam. Yes, you can get a time check. We are currently on 29 minutes and 55 seconds. Looks a bit like a Arnie head from Terminator. Yeah, actually, it's a bit better than that, to be honest with you. It is kind of funny. People use that as, look at that effect. It was a bit crappy in that film. Yeah, no, it wasn't. It's like, if it's a good enough movie, something like that shouldn't take you right out of the film. Well, hello. Good morning. Cryogens come out to play, yay. But it's doing that thing, but it's with syringes on there. I used to go to the cinema a lot, but it's too expensive now. £13 in and not even a double bill. Yeah, I'm less bothered about the cost, but that has gone way up. There's no two ways about it. When you can own the film, if you wait a few months, you can own the film for about that sort of price. Then, yeah. I think I got a bit tired of the whole kind of sort of pushing of 3D and stuff like that as well. I think even in the best examples, although not a great film, something like Avatar, but the 3D was amazing, I didn't really care for it. Excuse me. Stand aside, rich woman coming through. Yeah, so it did look a little bit like that, didn't it? It's like going, well, I have so much more money than Yao. She's a bit well-to-do, isn't she? Well, I hope to see a zombie or a dead body in that trunk at some point. I was like that with Life of Pi. The 3D was awesome, but the film was just a bit overlong. See, the thing is, things like 3D, any kind of gimmick, it kind of wears thin very fast. They tried to sell it as being immersive, but the thing was with it, I didn't find it immersive at all. I noticed 3D for about the first 10-15 minutes, and then after that I'm just watching a regular movie but getting a headache at the same time. And it's only occasional bits where something would kind of make you notice that it's in 3D again, and when that happened it was a bit distracting. It was just unnecessary. It cost a lot of theatres a lot of money. Or cinemas. I think Red Light Media did a very interesting video on discussion on the death of cinemas and stuff like that, and they nailed a lot of the sort of stuff that I have concerns about as well in that. Or Beautiful Rotty, my favourite dog breed. They're always presented like this as being mean and stuff. The ones I've met have just been absolutely kind of soft as nobody's business. Just real dopey dogs, just absolutely adorable. Bought a copy of Argento's Dracula. It's awful. What was the one? Dark Shades or something like that? Dark Glasses? Dark Glasses. I've still not seen that. I'm going to have to see if I can find it, actually. Just going to quickly Google Dark Glasses. It's around. I'm going to keep that on there. I might order that. Quite a long delivery time on them. I'll get a hold of it, but I might take you up on that, John. We should have a catch up at some point as well, and have a chat about it. Is the sort of like underlying theme with this is like rich people getting what they want, no matter what, throw enough money at it, and it will solve the problem. But do you want that problem solved, or do you just let go? Oh, he's starting to regret this guy being brought back. He's already coming across as a bit of a prick. If there's one thing I would say, it's like we haven't had much time to sort of get to know him. That's probably quite a difficult thing to sort of insert into a story like this, and maybe that's the point, that we don't know who he is. But we've gone from him being completely unconscious to suddenly he's an asshole. But we've got no context really from of what he was like before. But going by his mother, after the card player, it was a sigh of relief. Okay. I did watch the card player. I didn't think it was absolutely awful, if I remember right. I only watched it once, but yeah. Oh, yeah, Witchfinder General. Great film. I love that Arrow do such amazing releases. For the most part. They have fucked up on a couple of occasions. It always reminds me of my review of Rottweiler, Dogs of Hell, on the Cynical Celluloid playlist. And my then girlfriend let me use some of the photos of her Rottweiler. Just the softest, daftest, completely lovely dog you can imagine. So docile. Oh, dog cam. Best cryogenics movie, Jason X. No, not the Rotty. That was my favourite Rotty. If you want a good Frozen morals film, then La Bête. Its sequel is priceless as well. It always starts with pets, doesn't it, with these kind of bastards? Pets and wild animals. There's another. Brace yourself for that one. It's a little bit fruity. Jesus, I think we might have just wandered into Home Alone 2. This really will be a horror film if Donald Trump turns up. Ooh, a little bit of politics. Craven has a big thing with dogs in Hills Have Eyes too. The dog has its own flashback. Yes, yes, it's infamous. I don't think I ever reviewed Hills Have Eyes too, but I have seen it. And the dog flashback is very bizarre. So what the fuck were they thinking? You just walk in there and strip off and hey, Bouncer had a dream sequence in Neighbours. Does Captain America, the first Avenger, fall into this kind of territory as well? He does have a cold, cold heart, doesn't he? I see a little bit of commentary going on with this. A little bit of something to say about the executive class. I have to say he plays the part pretty damn well, doesn't he? He's good at that kind of just absolute, forgive the pun, icy heart. He projects that pretty well. Do you think Craven was having a go at corporate America? Yes, a little bit, yes. Bit of bruiser going on. Oh, spoilers. I mean, it's one of the things with the directors of the time, isn't it, really, that so many of them kind of did either deliberately or subconsciously kind of injected politics into their movies. I mean, when we did the Night of the Living Dead stream, I talked about George Romero a bit, but he did that kind of stuff as well. And I've always wondered whether or not that was entirely deliberate, or whether it was just something that kind of like emerged from what he was doing. I do love the dynamic of the mother being like, he's my child, he can do no wrong. Your child died a while ago. Excuse me. I'm gonna have to see if there's a nice nice release of this film. Sure there will be. So lead him up to the roof so you can throw him off. Oh no, he's just going to force a heart attack, isn't he? Craven had something to say, I think, but didn't always hit it out of the park. But he always made films that had an undercurrent of society and its values. Yeah, and I think what's important with a lot of film storytelling is not necessarily that the director is explicit about stuff, because sometimes they put stuff in there which is not they don't necessarily think about. I think George Romero is a big one for that particularly. Someone like Cronenberg was much more deliberate with the things that he put into his movie, I think. But Craven and Romero and John Carpenter to an extent as well. I think those guys often had things that sort of emerged from their kind of filmmaking, which I think sort of came into the film through an almost subconscious kind of thing. Especially with Romero, you look at Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that. I think a lot of the stuff that's suggested in that film sort of emerged from this kind of atmosphere and this location and stuff like that, and all these choices that Romero made without actually necessarily wishing to be overtly political, or at least deliberately political. And that's as much to do with them being kind of in touch with the zeitgeist somewhat. With Dawn of the Dead, it was the whole kind of more consumerism kind of thing, which sort of immediately brings up these kind of ideas. And, especially you're talking about the mid-'80s and things like that, with the rise of the yuppies and things like that. That sort of stuff kind of comes out when you tackle that subject. These things can sometimes be weaved in quite naturally and without necessarily being deliberate. I sort of agree and I disagree a little bit with that. I don't think that Romero necessarily set out to be political, but I think it's something that just sort of emerged from his work. if you ever see interviews with him and his ideas and thoughts on movies that he just made or was making, those ideas weren't necessarily up front, or even existed as far as he was concerned. But he kind of weaved his worlds around certain ideas, things that inspired him. And I think there was a sort of emergent property to the kind of situations that he would build that lent themselves to further exploration, and it kind of came out in the characters. Romero's ideas kind of changed over time of what his films were about. And, you know, you look at someone like Lynch, David Lynch, he has, I think, a very, very clear idea about exactly what it is he's talking about in any given movie. But people's interpretations of those films kind of change, and certain experiences that you take to any given Lynch film changes how you kind of interpret it. There's an argument that David Lynch is probably an incredibly feminist filmmaker in some respects, because of the kind of female characters that he creates, but I don't think it's necessarily he's deliberately doing it in that respect. There's just aspects which kind of cross over between those fields which kind of work. I mean, Inland Empire is a very, very female-centric film, as a for instance. Although, you know, a lot of the women are victims, or at least kind of well, yeah, I guess victims is a good description, but they it's about their strength of getting through that and the issues that surround what creates this world for them, which, you know, naturally lends itself to being kind of like a very focused on the female characters and their problems. Twin Peaks is a good example. Lost Empire, Mulholland Drive. They're characters where the situations are something which is almost uniquely about the female experience, as a for instance. Is David Lynch deliberately trying to do that stuff? Maybe, maybe not, but that's certainly something that comes out of those films. Cronenberg was more philosophical. Yes, he was. And, you know, is. Rented it on Betamax. Really? Okay. These bloody birthday people. It's been a very interestingly kind of pitched performance in this. Because it's a character that seems to be devoid of feeling, very ruthless and, again, forgive the pun, cold-hearted. But it's not inanimate. He's kind of a sort of, I guess, psychopathic type of character, isn't he? Did see this on DVD on Amazon some time ago. Don't know what the print was like. It'd probably be better than this, because this is I'll grant you, a fairly good VHS rip, but it is a VHS rip nonetheless. What's interesting, though, is, you know, when you're talking about the kind of different transfers and that kind of stuff, VHS is, like Star Trek. We were talking about Star Trek earlier on, and when they HD'd it, they upscaled it and all that kind of stuff. Then a lot of things became wrong, to say the least. You might say it's devoid of a soul. Yes. Bought a couple. They were all VHS pan scan releases. I think I've got 3 copies now. I hate pan scan. I think the first time I ever noticed it when before I even knew what it was Ghostbusters, that lift scene. Always looked wrong. It's definitely, yeah. I would say this is deliberately political. Yes, a bad panel scan was like absolutely awful. But you get the opposite. It's like with the Star Trek episodes where they've opened up the shot, and then you see parts of the set you shouldn't get to see. There's definitely pulling out a Git masquerade. Yes. Hello, Kerry. I hope you feel better soon. I guess that got rough. He's dead inside. Oh, it really has to be the mother that kills him off at the end of this. Assuming he gets killed off. Do you think Star Trek was better without the new special effects put in? I'd prefer not to have that. I think when they do these upgrades, basically they should be only doing the minimum amount to make it work on the current formats, basically. So upscaling, maybe sharpen it off a little bit to get rid of something like with this, for instance, because it's VHS. It's very, very soft, almost out of focus feeling. So when they upscale it, kind of like tighten it up a little bit, make it a bit sharper, improve the colours a little bit, and if there's any kind of impact on the effects in it, then kind of deal with that. And a good example of that would be Evil Dead. Seeing Evil Dead in high definition, where you see the cabin out in the cabin, exterior of the cabin shot with the moon in the top, and on VHS you couldn't really see that it was a matte. So making little adjustments to deal with that. Star Wars, like with the Empire Strikes Back, the snowspeeder scene, where he cleaned up the matte lines and the bleed through and all that kind of stuff. Got no problem with that. But the extra stuff that got shoved in, the extra scenes, and kind of like changing the band to whatever the fuck that ended up being, that's way, way too far. Yeah, we'll see you soon, Kerry. Get well. Definitely check out John's Night of the Living Dead review. Well, analysis of the opening. It's very, very good. Let's see if I can put a link in there. No, don't smile. That's too much like joy. That's warmth. Even if it does look like you're going to eat somebody's face off. Just putting a link to John's video in the chat. Check it out later. 4K release of Aliens has changed the colour grading. Fans aren't happy. Yeah, I don't see the point in doing that. That sort of stuff you would have thought was deliberate. I don't know how much James Cameron had to do with it. If, knowing him, he probably decided he wanted to tinker. There's a big part of me that goes, once you've made your film, you've put it out there, leave it the fuck alone after that. Oh, I think you're right, Blue Iris. I think that is, yeah. Had the AI upscaling or something, didn't it? And it did all sorts of weird things to the background faces. So you need to do a reverse exorcism for this, because that's you need to put a soul into him. Cameron has simply poo-pooed any criticism. It sounds about right. It's why I don't really believe a lot of his complaints about making the film in Britain. I don't get me wrong, I don't think he's a bad director by any stretch of the imagination. He's made some very, very entertaining, very good films. But I can never get past this feeling of there's something not quite right with him. I'm a big Cameron fan, but when he said these critics need to get out of their mum's basement, so I was offended. He's a bit up his own arse, isn't he? I mean, there's hints of that with when he did the Piranha film, and he's so ashamed of all that kind of stuff. You know, it's like, you know, kind of get over yourself a little bit. Would you say AI is a bad thing to add to film? Well, you're not adding AI to films, but you're allowing AI to do things to films. And this is the thing. AI is a potentially valuable tool, but it's also kind of a path to incredible laziness. And, you know, not to be too doomsaying kind of thing, but the whole AI thing is it takes away from the human experience, in my opinion. When it comes to art and stuff like that, the idea that AI can do it better, and it might be able to do something very, very convincing. But a lot of that stuff that it's doing is stuff that we are not learning to do ourselves. And it kind of makes the world a little bit more fragile. There are so many skills that have been lost to time, usually through atrophying or just because, you know, convenience has kind of convenient ways of doing things has taken over, or something's been automated and that kind of thing. Example of that, why it's hard to land on the moon again when we've done it already. A lot of that technology, you talk to engineers, they go that a lot of that technology has been lost to time. It was simple compared to what we have these days, but there's things about what they did and the process that they did. They learnt a lot. So that's gone because they haven't used it. And lots of those skills that, you know, when it comes to filmmaking and, you know, the care we take with upgrading and upscaling and kind of adding things in, automating it takes a lot of the human process out of it. It's kind of a weird thing, you know, and not least it kind of opens up a lot of channels for people to abuse it as well. And the thing is, I honestly, I think AI is one of those things that is self-defeating in some respects, because it kind of ends up sort of feeding in on itself. So you get a little bit of AI and it generates some stuff. It goes out into this pool of the information in the world, and then the next time an AI comes along, it starts scraping for information, it drags it all back in. And that just keeps reiterating. It goes round and round and round and round until there's just this heat death of information. This is probably the best way I can describe it. It's an interesting little bit, isn't it? It's like, you know, I've been dead. There was nothing. You're wasting your time with your religion. It's an interesting sort of aspect as to what religion is and that kind of stuff. If none of that does exist, does it change how we should live and that kind of stuff? I mean, I've got ideas and thoughts of that as a philosophy. But it sort of presents this kind of almost... Well, you could describe him, frankly, as an atheist, if you like. Because he clearly doesn't believe in God. There's no afterlife. Therefore, he's this monster. That's a shame, Kieran. It is unfortunate that people look back at old movies and stuff like that, like they're inferior because they don't have these modern special effects and stuff like that. It's such a moronic kind of opinion. That wasn't a very nice thing to do. Yeah, Adam, you nailed it there. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's people are shit when it comes to watching films and stuff these days. David Lynch moment. I'm rich and powerful. I must be allowed in. Yeah. I've said it for a long time. Hollywood in particular has, not just Hollywood, but kind of big media production industry, particularly in America, has fed its audience such slop and tried to convince them that if it's not in 3D, it's not worth watching. If it's not this current version that we've tinkered around with, it's not worth watching. You get people, a terrible film, people complain about it, and they're just like, kind of like, yeah, oh, your film's snob, da 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 da. They've trained their audiences to accept slop. And this is what happens, this is now something that, not irreparable, but your mainstream audience is now so unable to kind of watch films in a meaningful way, in my opinion. If it's not rattling keys in front of your face, or it's not bang, 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 bang with the latest kind of high-res kind of image, it doesn't have CG, and it's using practical effects, then, then it's awful. It's like... And sad thing is, there are so many films throughout time, throughout the history of film, that won't live up to modern standards in either ethical or philosophical or whatever kind of technical sort of standards, but are nonetheless fascinating films and interesting kind of peeks into different opinions and points of views. And so much of the modern audience is unable to appreciate that. It's a shame. Good evening, Timbo. Yeah, you're quite right, John. It is an interesting scene. And, there's so much to sort of glean from a scene like that. You can take it one way or the other, or you can kind of, try to appreciate the fact that it could be one either. But that's a moment where you've got this kind of philosophical kind of thing, which gets kind of buried in there. That if you watch it, you can bring it out and discuss it, and you can get different takes from it. Only me? He's got the fire so big because that's where he's come from. It's making him feel very much at home. That must be the trophy room. The amount of people who refuse to watch black and white films. There was a critic who said, I won't watch any films prior to, was it like 1979 or something like that? So arbitrary. And you're missing out on so much. The thing is, if you look at the history of cinema, it puts a lot of stuff into context. Where society was, the forces of change, or even conservative forces, depending on what film you were watching. And the inability for people to sort of sit down and kind of like appreciate the films for what they were and what they are now. Even the balance between those two things is quite fascinating in its own right. It's such a shame. You won't watch any films that came out before 2025. Michael Beck is good in this movie, proper menacing. Yes, he is, yeah. And it's the thing, isn't it? He's really kind of nailed that cold, like you say, soulless aspect. He's utterly amoral. But you got that religious twist in it as well. The conflict between kind of the spiritual and the physical. She's changed her tune. It's funny though, isn't it, Kieran? But Zella and that's not a totally unusual practice. He kind of indulged in it quite a bit, but sometimes it's out of necessity, sometimes it's out of laziness. I'm not quite sure with him, to be honest with you. I know that movie that we watched on the play along was actually quite good. Well, not extraordinary, but it was definitely a decent film. Of course, she moves fast. In other words, a typical bad yes. He's not a director I feel particularly given to defending, but I don't really know that much of his stuff. It is quite interesting, though, you're so fascinated by the guy and also repelled at the same time. You watch his films, but you hate them. And then again, I had a very similar kind of relationship with Jess Franco's stuff to start with. We need an Arnold Schwarzenegger line here, don't we? Like, just chill. The Iceman to come off. Oh, that was dinner. She totally Jack Nicholson'd him. Breaks through, I can hear us, Frosty. Would kill the dinosaurs. It's off to the call. Oh God, Simon. That is a good one. He's on ice. I was so scared. I need to get some ice cream. I'll be back in a minute. Don't tell me he had some sort of secret exit from the freezer. Oh, a gapping hook. See, these days I would have thrown in 15 stun grenades and probably sat outside there with very, very loud music for 15 hours. My mate just got a Jess Franco box set for, but it's not giving me it. No, it's going to give me for Christmas Day. There's worse things in the world. Don't think Simon will agree. Stored in next to the Ben & Jerry's, yes. Now there's a late term abortion. It was for the best, love. These days, I'd have blown the door off and thrown the stun grenade and had 6 SWAT officers machine gun him. Yes. Well, he's rich and white, so. An ice cream. Oh, don't freeze him. That's a killer line. And the world is fucked. Oh no, it's a cool film, John. It's a little on the nose on a couple of occasions, but it's a fun film. And an interesting one as well. It does have some stuff to say, which is makes it worthwhile. And the camera pans along. And it settles on one that says Elon Musk. Who directed this Chiller movie? It's Wes Craven. That was a good suggestion, John. Thank you very much for that. I used to imagine all these people are like CEOs for like kind of big ass companies. Zuckerberg, you got Musk, and you got a whole bunch of like really rich assholes. It's about 85, Kieran. That was good. I enjoyed that. Very good for a TV movie. I'm going to see if I can find a decent copy of that as well. Let's have a quick look. It's on DVD. Although not. Oh wow, 55 quid. There's one for 15. I don't think there's any Blu-ray version of it. Hopefully somebody will make a Blu-ray version of it. But I might get it on DVD at some point. But not at 55 quid. That's fucking incredible. I'll be honest, I haven't seen much from Craven. His Elm Street and Scream movies, Hills and Last House. That's it. His career kind of went in various directions, not as well as it probably should have, but those are good films in my opinion. I know there's a bunch of people who don't like the Scream film. I think the first one's a perfectly decent film. It's very good, in fact. But so many of the directors from that era, they made great movies in that era, but later on they sort of petered out. When you kind of you look at some of the way their careers went, and it wasn't always so great. Even with George Romero, as his career went on, the great aspects of his films sort of became less. And I think Land of the Dead. A lot of people do like Land of the Dead, and I think it's a watchable film. But with him, it was always about the microcosm for me. Be it Night Riders or Night of the Living Dead or any of the Dead, up until Day of the Dead. A whole bunch of his films were very kind of this sort of microcosm of society kind of films. Land of the Dead was a much wider vista because he had all these tools available and he could make more of the film that he really, really wanted to make. And it was not as impactful in the slightest. I think the casting was a little bit off as well in that particular film. It could do with a Blu-ray release on the 101 Films Black Label series or similar. Yeah, something like that. It just needs a decent release, doesn't it? A nicely cleaned up, nicely presented film. If it is a TV movie, it has that 4:3. Preserve that, whatever. That would work quite nicely. Land of the Dead was a bit of a dud. Survival of the Dead was utter toilet. All of the films had something to offer, even the really late ones. It's just they lacked a lot of the brilliance, I think, of the earlier stuff, and it's a shame. But sometimes that's just how it is. George Romero probably wouldn't have returned to any of the Dead stuff if he'd had much of a say in it. But his career was kind of pushed in that direction because they went, oh yeah, the zombie guy. 55 quid, I've already shelled out enough on my current trip to the UK. Yeah, it's a bit much. But yeah, it's this. I tell you what, I'll put a link in the chat. You can go check it for yourselves. I won't do it. It's a long. God, I hate the way they do that. Long URLs ought to be banned. Like this cameo in Body Bags also. John says, "I'll defend Diary to the Death." I'm a sucker for that movie. Yes, you are. I'd have to watch it again to really get a feel for it. But Diary was was one where I think it kind of showed George Romero's difficulty with sort of keeping up with the current kind of trends. So he tried to do the sort of found footage thing, but didn't quite know how to deal with that as a genre. It sort of straddles traditional and found footage, but it was shots that he just didn't seem to kind of get it in his head that what found footage is supposed to be. I'm glad we don't see too many films in the found footage. Once in a while was okay, but yeah. You know you're alone in liking that movie. Like I say, I'd have to watch again. Actually, out of those later two films, I probably preferred that one by quite a long shot. Because I think Survival of the Dead was just weird. It was so weirdly pitched. It's like they wanted to do Day of the Dead, but with kind of the leprechaun version of Irish people. It was a bit bad. Kenneth Welsh, because he's in that, isn't he? Yeah. He's not a bad actor, but in that, it's like kind of like, oh, big horror kind of thing. Jesus. But anyway, we shall call it an evening there. Hopefully, either next week or the week after, I'm going to talk to John and we'll kind of organise time. It will be a Saturday for the next one because I'm back on full weeks, and I probably won't be up for a double bill on a Friday night. But the next stream that we do, hopefully John will be along for the ride, especially considering the current video that's out of his. Go watch it. I think it'll be an interesting one for us to have a chat about. So we'll be comparing, basically we'll be watching and comparing the two Night of the Living Dead, the original and the remake. And I think that'll be quite an interesting thing to have as a double bill. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. Just as I've talked myself around to almost finding Survival watchable, but the tone is, yes it is, it really is all over the place. But for now, I'm going to say good night. Thank you for joining. I hope you had a good time. I certainly did, and thank you, John, for suggesting that. That was actually really quite a good film. I think there's a lot to talk about in that film. Maybe I'll review it one of these days. But for now, I say good night. Have a really nice weekend, and we'll see you on the next stream, and hopefully John will be along for that. So take care, folks. Good night.